The Arctic. While we might know it as Land of Santa Claus and the polar bears, there's a lot more to this icy, cold north than just a year-round workshop for children's toys. It's long been a place explorers have dared to visit, in hopes they would find new land or even some secret universe hidden at the top of the world for only those brave enough to try. Well, as it turns out, they weren't totally wrong. So grab your parka and buckle up for the top 10 horrifying things recovered in the Arctic. Coming in at number 10 is giant craters. First discovered in Siberia around the 1960s, these giant sinkholes are recorded to measure as much as 160 feet deep and seem to keep expanding year after year. Upon discovery, scientists immediately suspected the cause of these giant, strange holes to be rooted in climate change, and as it turns out, that theory was totally right. Basically, there's this thing called permafrost, which is a thick layer of soil that remains completely frozen, or rather should remain frozen. With rising temperatures, the permafrost is thawing, and as it does, large pockets of methane gas accumulate beneath it. These pockets of gas eventually erupt, sending ice and soil rocketing through the air and leaving behind a giant hole in the ground. But if you ask some conspiracy theorists, they have a different story. Some believe that these craters are the former landing grounds for UFOs that have since left the Earth, and many even believe that the craters are actually a gateway to another world. Coming in at number 9 is a mystery noise. Now, this is somewhat a conspiracy, but according to local northern Canadian hunters, a strange pinging noise was heard coming from the Arctic seafloor. Well, enough residents heard this noise and reported it that the Canadian military actually came to investigate it further. But from there, it seems to have become a dead end. The military aircraft failed to find anything hidden in the water and detected no noise at all, despite the locals swearing by the phenomenon. But what was that noise that they all heard, and where did it go? Well, if you ask conspiracy theorists, they believe it was Russian submarines spying on them, while others have just chalked it up to the movement of ice sheets, which apparently are known to make some bizarre noises from time to time. But craziest of all, according to a few terrified citizens, they think it's the sound of an ancient demon awakening to destroy all humans for good. Next up at number 8 is microplastics. Okay, so while this might not be the typical definition of horrifying, our planet being slowly destroyed seems pretty horrifying to me. It turns out that fast fashion is hurting more than just our landfills. These cheap materials that make up so much of today's clothing is making its way into the most remote oceans in the world. Microplastics are these tiny fibers, no bigger than a few millimeters, but are the cause of a massive environmental worry. Apparently, when you do your laundry, the microplastics from your clothing shed and turn up in grey waters. From there, the water travels to a treatment facility where luckily 95% of these dangerous fibers are trapped, but some inevitably escape. With all the people around the world doing what is pretty much non-stop laundry, billions upon billions of these microplastics are ending up in the Arctic Ocean, and they pose a huge risk to creatures inhabiting the water, like already endangered polar bears, as well as whales, seals, and other critters. Now, of course, it's not like you can just stop cleaning your clothes. I guess that's what makes this one so concerning. Realistically, the only way to stop the rise of microplastics is for manufacturers to cut back on man-made materials that shed these dangerous fibers. Coming in at number 7 is an ancient virus. It's not every day you think that you're gonna find a prehistoric virus buried 100 feet deep in the Arctic permafrost. But back in 2014, in the depths of icy Siberia, 2 researchers did exactly that. The ancient virus, named Pithovirus, is believed to date back 30,000 years and has remained completely untouched in its hibernation, but still completely active and capable of infecting amoeba. According to people much smarter than me, it's apparently a giant virus containing 500 genes, which is insane considering that HIV only contains 12. But don't start panicking just yet. Luckily, experts believe it's very difficult to actually become infected by this virus as a human, although technically it wouldn't be impossible. Next up at number 6 is an ancient Siberian civilization. The Arctic Circle in its entirety includes lots of countries like Norway, Greenland, even our home and native land, Canada. But the further north you go, the less popular it tends to be due to the incredibly cold temperatures. But after recent discoveries between the years of 2013 to 2017, it seems as though once upon a time, a medieval civilization dating back to somewhere between the 12th and 13th century was found and cultivated an entire community near the town of Salakard in the Siberian Arctic. To date, archaeologists uncovered a total of 47 burials, including many mummified bodies kept in pristine condition due to the permafrost. Despite some of the mummies being found with shattered bones and crushed skulls, the internal organs were still well preserved. Of all the mummies found, there was only one female, leading experts to believe she must have been from high class or something like that to be mummified among all the men of the time. Coming in at number 5 is the flight of the eagle. Way back in 1897, even less was known about this great icy circle, and a Swedish explorer by the name of Solomon August André decided that he was going to be the man to reach the North Pole. With the help of 2 of his friends, he planned to complete the mission via a hydrogen balloon, starting in Svalbard and finishing in either Russia or Canada, planning to pass right over the North Pole on the way. Fast forward 30 years, a group of geologists, as luck would have it, landed on the uninhabited island and happened upon ruins of a camp. They discover a journal left by the expedition team detailing the horrors of this trip. The geologists found out that their balloon began rapidly leaking hydrogen just 2 days after it began, and they crashed into the ice, halting the journey 500 kilometers from their initial start point. Now, without their method of transportation, they were forced to make their way back on foot in an attempt to survive the harsh winters of the Arctic. Although they survived an initial 3 months, unfortunately they were no match for the brutal conditions. When the camp was discovered years later, all 3 bodies were taken back to Sweden to be cremated, thus solving the mystery of the disappearance all those years ago. Next up at number 4, viral epidemics. Back in 2016, due to the rising temperatures in the Arctic, the ground was beginning to thaw, and although initially no one really thought much of this, what ended up happening was an anthrax outbreak that actually killed 1 person and hospitalized 72. The cause? Well, apparently the local groundwater became contaminated by thawing deer cadavers who had once died from this infection. The horrifying part of this is actually the precedent it sets for the future. Because of the cold temperatures in the Arctic, many viruses can actually stay preserved in the bloodstream, as was discovered in 1918 when 6 young men who died from the Spanish flu were found with their active virus still in their blood. As the earth heats, there's worry that buried bodies from deadly diseases like smallpox could begin to infect the living if the temperatures continue to rise, melting the frozen graves. Next up at number 3 is a secret German base. In October of 2016, Russian scientists uncovered something truly shocking. It turns out back in World War II, he who shall not be named and his band of military followers built a secret military base in the depths of the Arctic soon after their invasion of Russia. Located on Alexanderland, it is not known for sure exactly what the purpose of this bunker was. Some believe it was to learn about and become acquainted with the harsh weather conditions to be able to better attack when the time came, though some believe the leader sought out ancient relics he believed would give him great power. Upon its 2016 discovery, 500 different artifacts were found, including old weapons and documents pertaining to World War II. As with just about all Arctic discoveries, the artifacts remained in excellent condition due to the extremely low temperatures, but that doesn't make this super secret war bunker any less creepy. Coming in at number 2, the HMS Terror. You may or may not have heard of Sir John Franklin, the 19th century naval commander who set out to find the Northwest Passage. Well, unlike some of the other explorers of his time, he was actually incredibly prepared. The famous HMS Terror ship was a converted bomb vessel that had survived the War of 1812, and upon his Arctic expedition, the ship was reinforced with iron plating to crush the thick layers of Arctic ice. Stocked with 3 years worth of food, Sir Franklin and his 134 crew members boarded 2 ships and set sail. But despite their best efforts, they were no match for the harsh conditions ahead. The ship was lost to the Arctic and its whereabouts remained a complete mystery. That was until August of 2016, when members of Arctic Research Foundation on their own expedition found the ship preserved under the ice. The horrifying part comes when historians were able to piece together what their last days on the vessel could have looked like. Assumed to have been trapped by the ice for over a year and a half, the crew was dropping right, left, and center, including their captain Franklin. So the remaining survivors decided to abandon the ship and take their chances on foot. Planning to to reach a remote fur trading outpost hundreds of miles away. With no food, no water, and no resources left, the crew was left with but one thing to keep them alive: each other's flesh. Now, there were no survivors, but many bodies remained mummified from the permafrost, allowing historians to learn about what really happened on the infamous HMS Terror. And coming in last up at number 1, no more Arctic? Okay, so while this one hasn't necessarily been recovered by a group of researchers or scientists exploring the Arctic, it is certainly a huge concern amongst researchers. The rate climate change is affecting the world, as we know, is cause for concern, and scientists are trying to foresee what might happen. According to a study from 2011, there is concern that all of the Arctic sea ice could be gone by the year 2060 due to the rise in greenhouse gases on the planet. Not only that, if you look at many of the animals native to the Arctic, polar bears, Arctic fox, walrus, narwhals, beluga whales, they're all declining in population at massive rates and risking extinction because their environment and food sources are being destroyed by either humans directly or climate change, which is pretty much also caused by humans. So while this might be more of a cautionary tale, it's certainly not a myth. It's obvious that the world around us is in need of our help, and without change, it's very likely we're gonna face some dire consequences. As always, thanks for watching, guys. I'm Kennedy, and if you liked this video, make sure to hit subscribe. See you next time.